Ka nui te mihi ki ngā mana wāhine katoa I tēnei rangi whakanui a tātou. Tēnā koutou, kia ora nā. Talofa lava, malo lelei, whakalofa alahi atu, bula. Greetings to you all who are dialing in. I'm assuming my metes are here, our panelists who are joining me for this particular session. So I've got a really simple job today. I should introduce myself though. If you weren't here earlier, ko Keti Marshall min tōku inga, huri ngō Ngāpuhi, ara he tātai hoki ki Ngāti Parau. My job today is to basically shine a light on the beautiful work that my friends do. So I'm convening this panel. The first thing I thought about is friendship, the role of friendship in building movements, in building kaupapa across our mutu. And we heard from Auntie Mililani about the role of friendship in creating the Pacific Network. I also thought about, who's tūturu, who is working in the rangatiratanga sphere or directly with our communities, and in a really creative and powerful way. These women are all creative practitioners, but I might let them introduce themselves, starting with you, Inez. You are in Aotearoa with me. Ko wai koe, no hea koe, where are you calling us from today?
Tēnā koutou katoa, tēnā koe e te tuakana. Ko te arawa te waka, ko te arawa te iwi, ko tainui me Ngāti Porou hoki ngā iwi. I'm from Te Arawa, Ngāti Porou and Tainui. My name is Inez White Faitala, and I'm from Rotorua in the central North Island of Aotearoa. My husband is Jeremiah Faitala, hence the Faitala, and he is from the islands of Niue and Atiu. Tēnā koutou.
Over to you, Jade.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Jade Hadfield. I'm Ngāti Kahununu, Ngāti Whātua ki Kaipara, and with links to Ngāi Tahu. I live in Melbourne, or now Melbourne in Australia. I've been here for 14 years. So in saying that, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on the land of the Wurundjeri. I'd like to acknowledge their deep connection to the land, deep connection to their ongoing cultural practices. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Kia ora. Marina?
Malo lavalu soifua. My name is Marina Alifocio. I am Samoan. I was born and raised in Aotearoa, New Zealand, but I currently live in Melbourne. But I'm calling you from Canada. I'm calling you from Banff, Alberta. I'm calling you from the lands of the Stoney, Nakota, Blackfoot, and Tsuut'ina nations. And I'm currently here doing a creative arts residency. So, hi everyone.
Kia ora. Oh well, e mihi ana ki te kāhui ariki, ki te whare kāhui ariki. I'm calling in from Waikato, Ngāti Haua, so I'll be holding space from here. And in the spirit of he Puna kōrero, we might just let the kōrero flow. E hoa, Inez, we spent an intensive year together developing projects for social change. Mine was focused on economic justice, and in a way, yours was too. Talk to us about your passion project.
Oh, kia ora, Keti. Yeah, it was a transformative year, wasn't it? It was beautiful. In terms of my passion project, mine is to heal through home ownership. So taking something that is treated like a financial and a process-based event in our lives and reframing that as actually being possibly the disconnection from Papa Tuanuku being one of the reasons we're unwell in so many different ways. And that what if home ownership, not just whenua Māori, but home ownership is also a way where by reconnecting through this modern construct, we can heal. So that was my hypothesis.
Beautiful. Yeah. Jade, I'll ask you the same question.
So my, I guess, so okay, anyway, first, I just want to this is going to be a long story. So I think first it really is about the context that I'm living in, right? So I'm not mana whenua You know, so I'm over here on the Kulin Nation, and so my jam comes from this kinship links between Indigenous, right? And so over here, like I'll always be from Waihuki, I'll always be Ngāti Pāro, but like my hapu, but over here I sort of take this identity of being under the bigger umbrella of Moana peoples. And so when I moved over, there was this realization of, you know, like these deep connections that we have across the Moana. And then so over here now in my mahi, I work in the arts in Victoria. And my mahi looks at our connections, like through our pūrākau, through our taonga, through our arts practices, our cultural practices, and looks at all of our Indigenous kinship links. You know, what I really want to do is this kanohi ki te kanohi between the Indigenous, and it's recentering our kaupapa, ourselves, you know, and it's taking out that white, the centrality of the whiteness or colonialism. Yeah, and so my project is about doing that through the arts, really. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Over to you, Marina.
Oh, and similar to Jade, as a Pacific migrant of Aotearoa, I didn't grow up in Samoa. I didn't grow up in my homelands. My fluency in my Ngangana Samoa, my Samoan language, I kind of have stepped up into that in my 30s. Didn't get to visit my homeland until I was in my 20s. And there are a lot of generations like me who didn't grow up on our lands. So therefore, my project is about reconnecting back to land through the art of spoken word poetry. So I'm creating a arts residency in Samoa, in my village Muliwhanua, which is behind me, my background behind me, with my father, who is a tula fale, who's an orator. And he's very versed in Samoan oratory. And I have practiced spoken word poetry for 14 years and have just made that connection that, oh, my gifts come from my father and my culture, not hip hop rappers that I love and follow. Doesn't come back from Tupac, unfortunately. I don't have, I don't fall to, you know, those ways, but it's been really healing and awesome. And so that's what my project's about.
Amazing. And as you have said that, you know, housing or building homes is like rongoa, what steps do we need to take together as Pacific Indigenous women to achieve that vision? The vision of rongoa, of housing, of having a home being our rongoa.
It's a good one. Good question. I'll say what I'm drawn to say first. I like to introduce my work as he mōkai nā papatuanuku, you know, ahau. So I'm a servant to papatuanuku. I could say I'm a property valuer and that I'm a qualified registered property professional, but that's not what does the healing or the work. It's the fact that I relate to being my job is to provide shelter and a place to belong to my tamariki and my mokopuna. And I don't know if I've answered the question, but it's stepping into that mindset for me as Wāhine to say, oh, this is our job. This is our vocation. You know, like purpose-based rather than process-based corridor around home ownership. Yeah.
And what kind of practical tools are you, I guess, do you use to support whānau? Because I think you need no introduction in this forum. It's those who are working with their whānau hapu and iwi will know what you do for our families across the motu. What kind of tools have you created to support whānau?
It's evolved, It's evolved over time. I came into this in 2016, into this mahi coming straight from the mainstream, you know, working for property valuation companies here in New Zealand, Tasmania and Victoria. And so I had lots of training, you know, I had lots of training and professional ideas. And over that time and coming through to our, you know, our study last year, I've learned so much more about stepping into just being, into the ira wāhine space, that a lot, because the other side of things became burdensome for me. I felt like a butterfly trying to aspire to something, which was teaching and sharing my skills and home ownership and money with people, but overloaded like a donkey, just burdened with work and its literacy and its numeracy that we have problems with. So to try and process it, all of the weight and like not knowing where to go and how to do this properly, I just pulled right back and thought, what if the answer is in the opposite of what I'm doing? So I just enrolled into carving and weaving and creating the way I think is more my nature. It's not my profession, but it's my nature. And I really didn't have a great direction. I just had a hunch. I thought, we can't keep doing things the same way and think there's going to be some different answer. So as I started to step into the space of saying, if you want to be with me, we need to create together. We need to spend gentle time together. And I need to be allowed to be myself. And if you let me be myself, I'll hand over whatever knowledge you want. And that just happened to be through the creative pathway for me in Toi Māori. Yeah.
I just want to jump in there. You know, because my thing is about, you know, I work in the Western arts and culture sector, right? And then because this Western idea of arts and culture is very separated, you know, like what you're talking about, Inez, you know, but we know that it's not that. We know that it is a part of our being. It's a part of absolutely everything, you know, like it's our foundations, you know, and then so what my, you know, like my motivation here is to bring that all back together, you know, because like the Western concepts, everything is separated. And then so you're looking at like cataloging, or everything, you know, even breaking it down to, say, for example, in Melbourne, we've got the NGV, which is art. And then you've got State Library Victoria, which is mostly manuscripts. And then you've got the museum, which is science, history, ethnographic, you know, and then, but then that's not us, right? And so it's like we work across all of these areas. This is a part of us. And so for me, whenever I do anything, it brings in all of these aspects, you know, all types of taonga, you know, like say, you know, your oratory, Marina, you know, brings in this sort of full sensory, full, you know, across, it's going back to the ways that we actually work anyway. And, you know, like the sort of reconnection to all that. And I think mine is about, you know, changing these Western, you know, like, or not even, quite frankly, it's like Western, you can do what you want, but it's like, say I work in a state institution, right? We pay taxes. I'm going to do it the way that I want to. Indigenous should be able to do it the way they want to, you know, and it's all about this holistic approach to it. Yeah.
Ehua Jade, because you like the curly questions, there is a question in the chat that I want to bring into the space. It's from Catherine Murupainga Aiken. You've heard of the abseil inside Te Papa and what has been deemed the kind of defacing of the works there, of the Te Tiriti or Treaty of Waitangi text, the English text.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So she has a question around, does the panel or anyone have a perspective on the place of the kinds of Indigenous artistic works in our campaigning? Speaking, you know, she's kind of, with the context being disruptive voices and that particular response.
My first thought is just in terms of the question of disruptive, right? Yes, disruptive, but at the same time, it's like, just take it over, you know, like don't disrupt yourself, just do it, just take it. And then so that's what I always kind of go for. It's like, if you indigenize it all, then you're only disrupting yourself, you know. But and in terms of this case, and look, I don't know too much context either. I just know what I've seen on the news and on social media. But in terms of this particular work, and I'm not sure if this is going to answer your question, Catherine, you know, I thought, yeah, you know, good on having that voice, because the institutions weren't initially doing anything about it. They were trying to be neutral. They weren't having, you know, they were trying to stay out of that conversation. But, you know, you can't, you have to get involved. So it's been a bit, yeah, I think using art as a practice, basically, you know, like it needs to be a part because it is connected to everything. It needs to be a part of these conversations, and they are used as tools of activism.
Nice. Okay, we could go on and talk about, you know, colonial power all day. Bringing Marina into the conversation, let's transition into creative voice. And I heard you, Marina, so you were born and raised in Aotearoa in South Auckland. You and I have that in common. As a Samoan woman living in Aotearoa, how has your creative voice helped you to connect more deeply to being Samoan?
So when I was growing up, I was always like topping English classes and would be forced to, Marina, go do it. Can you perform a poem? Marina, can you do this? Can you do that? And I never saw it as a gift or a skill, and I never connected it to my father. And there's many reasons why I never connected it to my father. My upbringing, for context, my mother and father are the eldest of their families, and they brought a lot of their family to New Zealand. So my upbringing was, my parents are the leaders of our family, which means they're overworked, which means that even though they are both fluent Samoan speakers and know a lot about being Samoan, our best bet was to learn English, teach the whole family English, and upskill that way. And so it wasn't until I was part of a group called South Auckland Poets Collective, and they started to ask questions in that group about our genealogy, where we're from. And I always just connected my gifts and my skills in this area to school or to, you know, institutions. I never connected it to my family or my culture as an institution. And so I think being in that collective and being amongst other Pacific and Māori writers, like, kind of forced me to ask myself, like, where does my inheritance come from? Because gifts are an inheritance, you know, they're a cultural taonga, they're a miasina, they're a gift. And so I say this because I only in my 20s did an auntie call me out and say, hey, don't you know your father's an amazing poet? Do you not listen to him? And so I'm having all these revelations later in life, but also being kind to myself that it's okay that I'm picking them up later. And now I'm encouraging, you know, my generation and generations after me to do the same. Whether it's, I find out when I'm 8 years old or I'm 80 years old, it doesn't matter. Like, the fact is, if I'm awakened to it and I know about it, then I can nurture it. I don't even know if I answered your question, but I'm just speaking from my story. Yeah.
As usual, your words always really move me, and I'm sure others on the screen. I wonder, Jade, because you're good at asking questions, just to switch it up, what's a question that you'd like to ask our mete Inez?
You know, I find this really interesting. You know, your this is going to be a terrible term, what I'm calling it, but like, you know, your buyback scheme, and then you turn it into Māori land. Talk about that. I love it.
Okay. Well, so just to just answer straight away, basically, I've done it 3 times now, where if you buy whenua in general land through banks, pay it off however you manage to do that, and it's mortgage free, and there's no real obstruction then to transferring it back into whenua Māori. And that's my big picture of the journey I'd like to take my clients or the whānau who I support through. The home ownership is like the kākano, but the end result is to pulling it back into whenua Māori. Yeah.
And then also, because you've talked about as well, you know, how to actually do that, because, you know, like buying whenua, buying homes is an impractical possibility for many, you know, and you've talked about the way that you do it so that it is possible.
So the pathway I like to take is through leaning right into faith, creativity, our spirituality, ourselves, and being authentically ourselves. And the reason for that is that information's not what we need to last that period of time. It's resilience, it's longevity. And I feel that if you can be yourself and feel beautiful in that space, you can last the course. Yeah.
Stunning. Okay, we've got 5 minutes until we wrap up. What I wanted to say to those listening in is that you can find out more information about the Atlantic Fellows for Social Equity, a program run out of Melbourne University. Those of us on the screen were involved in 2023. It's been an amazing journey, and if anyone would like to be part of that journey, we're open to support you in making that step. And each of our projects are kind of talked about there, and I think what we'd like to do is connect with you on those projects. If you have any questions about waka memory or what it's like to work in colonial institutions and be trying to put on Indigenous creative works like Jade does, or a residency across the Pacific for poets and orators, or the journey of home ownership and reclaiming our land at 1 acre at a time, we'll provide that information to you. In closing, what I thought I'd give you space, Marina. We always ask her to share her poems with us, and I'll hand the floor to you, Marina, as our last word.
Okay, just in terms of the spirit of friendship that Kitty talked about, I'm just going to share this poem that I wrote. It's I just want to give a trigger warning just in case, because I do share a little bit of my personal story here. And so just feel free to tune out if you don't want to hear this, but it ends in hope and it ends in positivity, and it's in honor of my friends and my aina who were there for me in this particular period. The poem is called Revolt. So I'll just go straight into it because I know we got 5 minutes or 4 minutes. All right. There's this revolving door, and it goes from the Garden of Eden to Mount Eden prison. And it's a revolutionary maze. I found it in the pockets of a Polynesian panther when he recited the history of the Samoan resistance movement, the Mau, and its leader, Tupua Tamasese. But before I share that gold with you, I want to tell you how a Māori girl once saved my life. I was 10 years old, wandering in the Vā, in that space between my perpetrator and my identity. He wanted to call it our secret, but I called it exile. Then, at 14 years old, the Vā inside of me ruptured like the sounds of a gunshot rising above the clouds of Upolu as my people marched for their independence. I could not contain the diaspora of tears migrating my adolescent cheeks to the tongue I could not speak. My eyes became prison cells, and the sound of my high school crush acknowledging my presence for the first time could not move a ruptured smile in that classroom. And so I marched. And this Māori girl, well, she happened to skip class that day with me too. And just as the Vā between me and the heavens was closing in, she caught me by the nape of my tears. She looked into my eyes and she saw her father. Not a perpetrator or a prisoner, he was a Māori probation officer. And before I could even give them my last breath, as the victim I would not grow up to become, they marched with me to the Papakura courthouse to give my affidavit, a letter that would be read aloud for everyone to hear, including him. The word says that the letter kills, but the spirit gives life. So I must have been reborn a poet, taking back every word ever stolen from me and melding it into a crown similar to the one that Sir Maui Pomare gifted my people as he wrote about his visit to Tupua Tamasese, the Mau leader who was exiled from Samoa to Mount Eden prison in 1924 by the colonial New Zealand administration. And in this letter, he read, "To a patriot of Samoa, today I saw Tamasese in Gore. I greeted him in his own tongue. We sat and talked of many things. I said, Tamasese, I am so sorry to see you here, and yet I am glad. I am glad I came to see your face. degradation an honor, deportation a privilege, imprisonment a crown of glory. And so we have made it. Sir Maui Pomare prophesied it, and that young Maori girl, Te Atawhai Christie, she declared it. Because in 1962, my country won its sovereignty. And in 2014, my body won its sovereignty, breaking the shackles of that revolving door that once pinned our men from the Garden of Eden to Mount Eden prison, that revolutionary maze where warriors once fled, a camping ground where Tangata Pacifica and Tangata Whenua once met, hands of the Moana caught in a colonial fishnet, our cheeks to our tongues, our babies to our blood, our ocean to our data, our statistics to our stories, to our sovereignty, Mao, sovereignty, Mao, sovereignty, body, sovereignty. We break down these doors with formidable tongues of spirit so a generation can run through it. We, women, are like a modern day Mao. We, women, are warriors. I am a warrior. And the thing about being a warrior is that you never have to fight alone, because that va between you, nations, and homecoming can never be colonized. May our bodies, our lands, and our spirits never be demoralized again. Thank you.
E ngā mare kura e mi I ana ki o ka ai o mana I pupu ake I roto I te ā, I te wā. E mihi ana ki a koutou no ngā mautere. E tura, e mihi ana. E mihi ana ki a koutou I rongo I te wairua. E ngā puna wānanga, e ngā puna kōrero. Tēnei te mihi ki a koutou. Ngā kanohi ka kitea. Te whenua e pupuru. Ngā kupu I puta. Ngā mahi toi e whakatairangatia tō tātou ao. To all of you, including you, Kiti, tēnei te mihi ki a koutou. Ka rongo I te aroha. Mō ngā tamariki mokopuna te take. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Whoa, I te whānau. E Kiti, you get to roll with some amazing wāhine. He miharo, and I'm thankful to that kōtiro Māori who grabbed you by the neck. And we all need to have those kind of hoa haere te whānau. Tēnā tātou.